Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this, the first in a series of Ulster Rugby Club Support webinars delivered in partnership with Openreach. My name is Barry Willis, Domestic Rugby Operations Manager at Ulster Rugby, and this series will feature members of our club and volunteer services team delivering weekly content that we hope will be of assistance to you, our clubs, as we look to the future. Tonight's webinar, titled Club Development Planning, will feature our Club Services Officer, Matthew Holmes, and Female Rugby Coordinator, Eliza Downey, as they chat through their experiences in delivering support programmes in Ulster over the last couple of years. If you toggle your cursor over the computer screen, you'll see a number of icons. One of these, a question mark inside a speech bubble, will allow you to access the webinar question and answers section. Here, we would be delighted to take any questions or queries from viewers that can be answered as we go. As and when we reach the end of the webinar, if there are any outstanding questions, the team will endeavour to answer them to the best of their ability. So without any further delay, I'll now hand you over to Matt and Eliza.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Hope everybody's keeping safe and well. I'll actually just start with a bit of a heads up in case a 3-year-old busts into the room at some point over the next hour. I think that sort of stuff has become normality for all of us during lockdown. So that's my kind of pre-webinar warning. So I hope you'll be accepting of that if it happens. I suppose as a starting point, it's worthwhile to give you a bit of an overview of my role and Eliza's role within Ulster Rugby, for those that maybe aren't familiar. I'm Club Services Officer, Eliza's Women and Girls Rugby Coordinator, and essentially our role is all on the off-pitch side of club operations. So we obviously have a rugby development staff who are involved in supporting coaching sessions, participation-based stuff, and all the weird and wonderful things that go on out in the pitch. Really, our role starts and finishes at the clubhouse door, if you like. We're pretty heavily involved in supporting clubs with development planning, which we're going to go through this evening, obviously, but other things in terms of governance, funding. Eliza is very heavily involved in terms of the management and operational side of competitions within the female game. So that's a very brief overview in terms of the stuff that we're involved in, if you're not familiar with us. Please don't be afraid to touch base with us if there's anything and everything which is kind of off pitch related, which you think we might be able to help with. The worst we can do is say no or pass you on to somebody else. So take a wee note of our contact information. Don't be afraid to follow up with us. And generally, in relation to the workshop this evening, we want people to follow up with us. We want you to engage with us, and we're more than happy to help. So that's a very brief overview. I'll get Eliza to say hello now, and I'll be passing on to her shortly.
Hi guys, looking forward to hearing from you.
But we're really just going to get stuck into the content now. So in terms of this evening's session, it's really just given a bit of an overview in terms of our thoughts and feelings on the development planning process, talking about our experiences so far, having worked with probably in the region of about 20 to 25 clubs over the past 3 to 4 years in this specific area. So about half the club population we've done some development planning work with. Some of you guys on the call might have been involved with that anyway. So it's really sharing our learnings, our thoughts on what the process maybe looks like. This isn't us telling you this is the way to do things. It's really just us throwing some information out for you. And it's something that you can maybe make a decision on whether you want to move forward with it or not, and we can support you along the way. So in terms of what we want to achieve, we want you to understand what a development plan is, and what its role is within a club, why it has value, why it might be of benefit to your club to do it, particularly at this time. Sharing some ideas on how to lay it out, how to structure your plan, what's the best way to potentially do that, and then finally, as I say, relay on some of our experiences from working with other clubs across the province. As I say, we've been doing this for about 3 to 4 years in an Ulster Rugby capacity. We have some of our own learnings and reflections along the way, so hopefully we can share those with you and help you as if this is a journey you want to go on. What we would also like to throw out to you, and this is something myself and Eliza have been discussing behind the scenes in recent days, is around the impact that the coronavirus has had. And you might be able to relate to me on this one, in that over the past number of X years, your club has rolled on year to year without maybe a massive amount of change. You've got you're consolidated, you've got structure, you've got normality. I think the coronavirus has really thrown a grenade on the club rugby for us, and there's no doubt that the 2020-21 season is going to look vastly different to what it's looked like previously. So I think now, in our opinion, this might be a really good time to go on to take on this development planning process. Start to think about what the next year looks like and really start to map that out. We're not saying that you need to come up with a long-term plan. It might be a one-year plan initially, but this could be a timely opportunity to start to think about, does our club need a development plan? Would it have real benefit for us? And it doesn't need to be something which is overly flashy. The other thing we would say is, in relation to the light bulb on your screen, is that this might be an opportunity to trial things which you haven't previously. We will have a new norm, is the term which has been thrown around a bit. So this might be an opportunity for you to try activities, try programs, which are maybe slightly different to what you've done in the past. Everybody's in the same boat. We're maybe throwing some stuff at the wall and see what sticks in some ways. So this might be a good chance for you to try some new things. So those are our kind of initial thoughts. So that's a brief introduction for me. Eliza's going to kick us off and really get delved into some of the context around the development plan process.
Thanks so much, Matt. Guys, like, why we're here tonight is to chat around development plans and planning in general within our clubs. So, you know, what is it? So it's a roadmap for the whole club. It'll hopefully help the club to see where it wants to go and how you guys will get there. It's important for it to be clear and concise, and that it's a live document. I think it's important for clubs to outline goals and how you're going to achieve them. And it's a chance for you guys to have a real strategic focus and to maybe look ahead and think of maybe blind spots that the club have had in the past. And if you're going to be more strategic about it, what would you put in place? In the next slide, we're literally going to talk about why it's important to have a plan. Some of the key reasons we feel that planning is important to identify and prioritise aims and objectives for the next X amount of years. And again, a development plan can be anything from 1 to 3 to 5 years. I think in the current landscape, a lot of our clubs will be looking towards maybe a year-long development plan, because things are moving and quite fluid at the moment for all of us. We want to be efficient and make good use of resources, mapping out what needs done and by whom and by when. So it's really important to understand what it is we're hoping to achieve and who's going to be doing it, and we need to set ourselves some time scales so we can really see if we're going to achieve those goals by the time we had intended. It's important to support quality operation of clubs across all areas. Okay, so there's lots of things that happen in the club on pitch. I think Matt alluded to it earlier, that a lot of the time our focus is on pitch. This is a real opportunity for us to plan ahead for those little fires that we put out during the year as they happen, and we're quite reactionary. It's a chance for us to plan off field and see what happens. How does the club run? Who do we need to make it function? Are we efficient? And do we use our resources to the best of our knowledge? On the next slide, we're going to chat about how we can create this plan. Myself and Matt have created a 7-step model, and really within those 7 steps, you're hoping to answer 3 basic questions. So myself and Matt really want to break this down for everyone and maybe take away that fear that's there around development plans and how long it might take, and you know, is it a huge investment of time? We're very aware that everyone is volunteering and giving up, you know, all your time already at the club, and this might seem like another piece of work and a massive commitment. We've broken this down to a 7-step model. You know, where are you now? What's your baseline? It's really important to be honest with yourselves as a club and to see, you know, what are our gaps? What has worked for us in the past, but really maybe have we fell short in certain areas? How can we rectify that? But where are we right now? Where do we want to go? What are those objectives? And being clear and concise about them and being strategic. And number 3, how are we going to get there? So our actions and by when we want to get there. And it's really important that the how is there. Sometimes we say we want to increase participation in grassroots. And yeah, we really want to grow our under 14s and our under 16s. The how is basically the success of what's going to happen there. So actually breaking it down, and myself and Matt always sort of pose that question and play devil's advocate with clubs and say, right, that's a really great idea. Let's break it down now to see what steps we need to get there. So as you can see, we're going to chat about the 7-step model. So next up, we have step 1. It's forming your team. Treat this development plan as a mini project. And it's not just trying to pick out which victim is going to say yes. And I think that happens sometimes in a lot of our clubs because the same thing falls to the same people, and that leads to volunteer burnout. So it's really important when we're forming a team that we have a multiple array of skill sets in the room and different operating styles, and that it's balanced. So maybe the people that we tend to look to all the time, it's great because their knowledge of the club, we need people that have a key knowledge of the club and how the club works, but we need it to be broad enough that they can bring in different areas of the club that maybe they're not aware of. So that bit around forming a team is hugely important. Sometimes at a point, our experience with different clubs, if we can have too many, then it can maybe be too many cooks in the kitchen. We usually find our project teams can be anything from 4 to 7, and it's to try to get like a nice mix in that group. Sometimes when you look at forming teams, you can look at Tuckman's model, forming, storming, norming, you know, there's all different ways of setting it up. What I'd say is try a different approach and not always to do the same thing within your clubs, and maybe people that have been project managers of different projects within your club in the past, maybe change it up a little bit. So step 2 now.
Sorry, Eliza, can I just a question on that, just for the benefit of the people that are on? Obviously there's no one size fits all, but have you any thoughts in terms of what roles or what people within clubs would be best to involve?
I think from past experience, Matt, with the clubs that we've worked with, there's a real trend in the secretary of the club, president, treasurer, and then sometimes they bring in people from different specific sections of the club. So they might have different backgrounds. It really is about getting to know who is in your club. What skills do they have? What backgrounds are they coming from? What value can they bring to this project? So I find that those are 3 that are usually there. And it is important to have that communication. We'll chat about later on through that how we can bring different people in at different stages and how we consult with others within the club. But it's really important for that team to be established, and really key, Matt, that when that team is established, that everyone knows their role on the team and that people know what's expected of them and what the responsibility is. So that's a great question, thank you. If we move on to step 2, again, just to be clear on your purpose or vision. I think anyone that knows me or that's worked with me in the past when I'm doing project work or within development plans, this is something that's really important, guys, because purpose is what you will always go back to. Even when you're step 4, 5, 6, 7 down the road, going back to that purpose. What are we wanting to achieve? Are we being true to our purpose and our vision? A lot of us within clubs, we talk about our brand and, you know, personal brand for the club and what messaging we put out to the public. Sometimes it's nice to have a collection of fancy values and words and put them up on a poster and this is who we are. But to be authentic and to live these out is really key. And sometimes if you're putting just words up there and you're not going to live them out, it can be to your own detriment as a club to have that vision and mission statement. So you can see some examples there, and obviously these are global brands that we're using with Nike, Google and McDonald's, but they always go back to that. And you know, it can be simplified, but when you get to step 6 or 7 down the road and you're looking at redrafting that development plan, sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees, but if you spend time on step 2 and actually think about what you want to achieve and what the purpose of our club is and what that vision is, you'll always it basically brings you back on course again. So I would also say step 2 has to be something that you don't rush it. You know, rigid time scales can push us on sometimes, that we need to get on to the next one. This would be one that I would take my time with and get feedback from different people in the club. What do you want to achieve? And for your club, what's our purpose and our vision? I think if we move on to step 3, now Matt's going to just chat around our SWOT analysis.
Yeah, that stuff around the vision is really important, because it really sets a scene in terms of where the club's going to be, how it's going to be moving forward. And just to provide some sort of rugby context to this kind of stuff, Ballynahinch is a club I've worked with quite closely over the last number of years. There might be a number of them in the call actually, but whenever we went through this process kind of back in 2017-18, their vision statement, if you like, was to be a club for all ages, a club for all people. Now, while that might be broad, it covers everyone, and it's reflective of the fact that the club is keen to make sure that they've got a booming mini section, a quality youth section. They've got numerous adult senior teams, 6. They've got a grown ladies section. They want to make sure that they're providing something for the people who are no longer participating in the game. In terms of their off-pitch stuff, they're very closely connected to their community. So that is what they're about, and everything that they do as a club, they're always kind of funneling back to that as their headline vision. So that is something which is really important as a starting step, or as a step 2 after you've set up your team. In terms of a baseline, we found that a SWOT analysis can be really, really useful as a starting point. And certainly in the conversations I have with clubs here, they probably, if I throw this out to clubs, what are you good at? They usually start with quite a small list until I probe them a wee bit more, and the list actually becomes quite extensive. So a lot of clubs don't realise that they are actually very, very good at a lot of things. Equally, they recognise, and they might find it easier initially without some probing, to find their weaknesses. But what I would say is the things which you are good at as a club, if you are aware of what they are, you can invest additional time and effort in doing more of those things, being even better at them. Those are the things where you get real value. Weaknesses, obviously, you can be aware of what they are. Those are things which you should be looking to address. Opportunities and threats. Opportunities are really, for me, things which you maybe haven't quite taken to their full value. Maybe things you haven't tried at all. Maybe it's around building partnerships, looking to engage with additional schools in terms of growing your mini and youth rugby. Maybe it's about trialing new programs. Those are about being aware of the things which you could be doing and could be taking advantage of. And finally, we have threats. These are maybe things which are more difficult for you to address, but if you're aware of the fact that they exist, you can certainly be trying to put provisions in place to address them. I think if we all could have taken rolled back 12 months before coronavirus, long before coronavirus, we could have realised that this was a threat. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but now we recognise that it is a threat for rugby clubs in various shapes and forms, and obviously there's every club in the land is doing what they can to try and address the matter. So look, I think that's a really good starting point. It's a bit of a brain dump. It's a bit of a blank page to throw out what you're good at, what you're poor at, what you could be doing more of, and what might be a threat towards you. In my opinion, lots of the things which you throw out onto that page will influence what your objectives and your actions are within your development plan. So again, if there are things which you're good at, put them in your development plan, do more of them, try and make them better. If there are weaknesses, try and address them. If there are opportunities and threats, include them in there as well and try to develop your actions. So that's a really useful starting point. It doesn't need to be a lengthy list. You can prioritize within that list, but certainly moving forward, that's going to help you put real value into the content of your development plan. In terms of actually how you might map this out, and again, this is kind of based on our experience of doing these things, and as Eliza alluded to earlier on, the actual on-pitch stuff, number 5 there playing, is a small, not a small proportion, but it's one of many aspects of a club. It's not just about the bread and butter of playing rugby on a pitch anymore. There are various other things that need to be looked at and supported off the pitch as well, both in terms of operating the club as a business in a financial sense, in terms of club admin, which is growing. There's additional administrative duties which people need to undertake. There's obviously legal requirements in terms of GDPR. We've got Corona return to play stuff, which is going to be coming into operation now. So those are all things which are additional workload. Some of these could be coupled up. You could argue that your social provision links back to how the club operates financially. Your events are obviously around bringing in income, that kind of stuff, fundraising. But these might be 6 headline areas which you could use to divvy up your development plan. Within each of those, we kind of have a list of areas for consideration, if you like. So under administration, volunteering is obviously critical. That's something which we would use in there as a list to prompt you to discuss it. Some of them won't be relevant to your club, some of them will be, and they deserve discussion. If they don't deserve discussion and they're not relevant, you move on. But by covering the list that we can give you, you're really going to leave no stone unturned. You're going to discuss all aspects of your club. You're going to help identify what's high priority, what's low priority, what needs to go on the back burner. So this is how we can start to give you a bit of structure to the areas which you would look to discuss within your plan. So yeah, that's an easy way to lay it out. In terms of taking that forward, again, this is something Eliza mentioned, was around clubs actually setting their objectives. We find that clubs are very good at identifying what it is they want to do as a headline area moving forward. For example, here is grow your membership. But that in itself is a bit of an empty statement. It needs more meat on the bones. It needs more consideration. It needs detail. So what we would encourage you to do in relation to this process is use and apply the SMART objectives model. And we're going to show you how to lay this out, but it's really around the devil in the detail. So instead of just saying increase your membership, we want to say increase your members within a certain section by a certain amount, by a certain time period, and how you're going to do it. So it's not a general comment, it actually is getting into the detail of it. So using their model here, which are applying the SMART model, we can identify that we're going to increase our engagement with local schools, we're focused on a specific age group, and we've identified that by a certain time period we want to grow our numbers. That is going to bring you focus as a club. You'll be able to apply who's going to be involved in that, and it means it's actually something you can stay on top of and deliver, rather than a generic statement which maybe doesn't hold a lot of value and is going to be really difficult to take forward. Taking that further, we're really starting to get into the detail of what your development plan might look like. And again, this is where we can provide templates and examples around this stuff. Do not feel as if you're on your own in these. We're at the end of an email or a telephone to chat through some of these things and share what we have in terms of resources. This again is your model for the detail. Your objective is your high line overarching target in terms of what you want to do. Your action point is where you're going to break that down into the detail. Be specific around the how. How are we going to do this? How are we going to achieve our objective? Be very, very specific. And by being specific, you can apply timescales in terms of when you want it to be delivered by, who's responsible, who's accountable. It might be an individual, it might be a team of individuals, it might be a project team. It might mean that the club needs to actually go out and identify who needs to be supporting this, because they might be shy on a specific volunteer role or people with specific skill sets. And then finally, is there a financial implication? Again, in our experience, we're finding there's lots of things which clubs can do to improve themselves, which actually don't come at a cost. Obviously, there's some things which do in terms of capital, equipment, that kind of thing, events perhaps, but there's lots of things which clubs can do to improve themselves which actually don't have a financial implication. But again, being aware of all these things, it's much more likely that you're going to be successful in delivering them. You can track them month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year in terms of how your club's operating. So again, we have a structure and a model for this. Don't feel as if you're on your own. We're more than happy to share that and we'll follow up with it. But this is really where you're getting into the detail of actually taking your overarching objective and breaking it down into tangible action points. Is that fair, Eliza?
Yeah, Matt, I just think that's really interesting around objectives, and I think we're throwing a lot at clubs here, and really this is just food for thought. I think that piece about clubs defining their own objectives is really key, and obviously we've sort of give you a bit of a chocolate box there to choose from, but it's really what aligns with your club and the needs that you have. So you're very much around defining what is important for you and your club. So next up on step 6, we're going to chat about consult and consulting. This is sometimes where clubs can kind of fall short, and any project team where you're tightly knit and you've got an agenda and you're working towards that, your decision making should be reflective of the entire club. And something that we found in the past working with clubs is it's the real benefit and value going out and putting the feelers out to actually get that feedback in and actually asking that question, what do you want? And I think we've both learned from that feedback from clubs is to never assume that you know what your stakeholders want, whether it be your players, coaches, other volunteering roles, or parents. So that might take the form of a survey, and there's obviously different formats out there. We usually would go from Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, and again we have different templates that we're able to work with clubs and to sit through that process of working out what are the actual best questions to ask to get the information we need, and not just to be having 100 question survey. It has to have a purpose for the information that you want to bring back into it. Another thing that we've seen has real benefit within clubs is having different focus groups or a club consultation workshop evening where you invite different members from different sections of the club together, and you have that open and honest feedback. And some of the real success stories that we've heard from clubs is when they do this piece, and then when they come to implementing some of the changes, that members actually see that they've been heard and the club have listened and they've implemented those. So, one of the clubs that we worked with, some of the information that came back was people would like to have Wi-Fi, and that would be an ice cream truck, but we'll just keep going here. They would like to work with the different members. So they put out and they said that they were going to require Wi-Fi and a coffee machine. And there were 2 asks that were put in through the survey, and there was a trend that came back from that we'd like that. We'd like to hang out in the clubhouse more if we had those things, and it would be a nicer area. The club went ahead and did that, and there were so many members that came back, and obviously they didn't know that there was a vast amount of members that had came with that ask, but they felt that, what, I feel a part of the club, I've been listened to, I've been heard, and now this is a nice space that I can enjoy. So something simple like that engages your members, and further down our series of webinars, our other colleagues will chat to you further around that engagement piece and how you get your members fully engaging with every aspect of the club. If we go to step 7 now, redraft, and I think sometimes people think there has to be draft after draft. What I think is beautiful about the process that Matt and myself are doing, and this is very much we learn from club to club, is that we go through things piece by piece, and that document is a live document that we change and is very fluid through this process of developing it. So it's really important to have a look at what you have and then to reconvene and think of, why did we start this? So that purpose that I chatted way back there in step 2, at this point, you need to have a look back and think, do you know what? Have we went off kilter here? Do we need to come back to this? And to just check that it's aligning with your purpose and your vision. Review all your information and combine that content. And then that piece around finalising a plan. I think sometimes there's a fear within clubs that once a plan is finalised, that's it. It's rigid, it's in stone, you can't move with it. That is not the case at all. It has to be fluid. You have to be aware that the goalposts might change at different points, whether it might be legislation, government implications. So there's different things that happen there, but you can coronavirus, I know, imagine. We have to be aware that those things are there. So the beauty of the plan is that it is fluid and it can change. But that part about redrafting and evaluating and reviewing is so key. And we mightn't have covered it earlier on, but I think that piece around when you're looking back over years of the club, if you can see any trends on things that have crept up every year, but you've dealt with them and you've moved on, to really have a look, are you covering those within your finalised plan, and to see if they could be implemented in some stage during it. So this is a real reflective piece, and it's good to pull that all at this stage. After you consult with all your members, you're going to have a lot of information there, so it's really key to look and to redraft and have a live document that you're happy with. Would that be fair to say, Matt, around those 7 stages, that end piece is really key to the success?
Yeah, that's critical. I think this is closely linked. Step sort of 6 and 7 there are closely linked to step 1, in that if you get the right team of people together, in our experience, usually they're 90% on the money in terms of what the priority should be for the club, the things you should be focusing on moving forward. But Eliza's bang on. You can't make assumptions that 6 people in a room have identical thoughts and opinions on the future of the club in comparison to the 100, 200, 500, 1,000 members underneath. So this is something we would encourage you to involve anyone and everyone in. Everybody should have the opportunity to give their opinion. In the past, we've done both versions of this with clubs. We've done the survey, the consultation piece there, where clubs are getting 100 and 150 people responding, which is brilliant. And to back that up, we've also done like an open evening, a workshop, and getting people in to throw out their thoughts and discussions. Really, you're taking that information, you're identifying themes, and you're filtering that into your plan. So that's what Eliza means there in terms of reconvening and combining the content. Take your draft plan, take the information coming back from your consultation, and put the two of them together. If you've worked through the first few steps and you've involved the right people from the start, you're probably not going to be too far away. And importantly, whenever people see your end plan and they see that the things which they have suggested in the consultation are in there, that's very empowering for them. They see that they have ownership of this, they see they've been involved, they see that their opinions have been taken on board. That also means that they're more likely to get involved. And the Wi-Fi and the coffee machine examples that Eliza threw out earlier, while they are small, they're also specific to an individual club, so don't think that they're necessarily wins for you. They were things which people immediately saw, hang on, I said about Wi-Fi, I said about a coffee machine, the club's done it. So that is very empowering. It is very powerful in terms of people taking notice, people potentially involving themselves in things. So this is a massive piece for us. It's something we can recommend. As Eliza says, we have models for you to follow. They are, of course, just a model. It needs to be club specific, and you need to ask the questions which are specific to your club. But we have a version sitting which we've tried with around 20 different clubs, and it's had a pretty good response. We're yet to have a poor response to it, put it that way. So it does have real value.
I think it takes the fear out of it, Matt, in relation to, I think it always does seem like a huge body of work, and there's real huge decisions that need to be made for the club moving forward in its development. But the way this is broken down and the step-by-step guidance and support myself and Matt can give you and your project team, like as cliche as it sounds, we really are there with you every step along the way, and at the end of the phone or an email for different ideas. So that piece around actually what's working best for you, you can throw it back to us and we can give you our experience and expertise around different things that have happened in the past, and then you can bring it back to the project team. If we look at just the next slide around this is the business part of it, guys. You know, after those 7 steps, you're going to plan, do, and review. As I said before, it's a fluid document and it's subject to change, and not to be afraid to actually have a look and see what's working for us. Did we start that at the right time? Actually, do you know what? On reflection, that wasn't a great time to start that. So if it is a 1, 2, 3 year plan, that for the next year, if this is something that's rolling, make those small changes at the start of the year that you're maybe going to do your recruitment or advertise for volunteers, so to actually learn and have a mechanism for capturing feedback. I think a lot of the clubs get feedback from different areas, whether it's players, volunteers, parents, but have something that you can capture it, because that feedback is gold dust when you're moving forward with 1, 2, 3 or a 5-year development plan, with those little changes that you can implement. I think at that point too, and people laugh at me, the purpose comes back again, and just to see, are you straying from it, and what do you need to do to pull back to it. So I think that hopefully makes sense. Matt's going to give you guys some his top tips moving forward for success now in development planning.
Sorry, I'm going to jump with a question in on the text, not on the chat. Somebody's texted me here with a question. It says, can it be difficult to find the time to look at the long term? Have you got any advice to allow us to keep this work at the forefront? So first thing I would suggest is, and this maybe comes back around the coronavirus, the situation we're in at the minute, I think it would be valuable for a lot of clubs to put together a 1-year plan, because the 2021 season, as I say, is going to look vastly different to what it has previously, and there is going to need to be planned for that. A lot of you will be familiar with the RFU's work and the return to rugby strategy or roadmap. If you like, that very closely aligns to what a development plan is for a club. The RFU are mapping out what the next 12 months looks like, or less. It might only be 6 months, depending on how quickly things move. So I would recommend as a starting point that maybe as a 1-year plan. There's also elements in there in terms of actually staying on top of your plan. And again, in terms of a wee bit of reflective practice from our point of view, we found sometimes that putting together a 3 and a 5-year plan with clubs, it becomes a wee bit overburdening. It becomes this vast document with too much stuff in it, and the club can't see the wood for the trees. So we think it might be useful to prioritize what it is you should be doing, break your plan down into quarters, and it also requires it to be embedded within the club and its operations at a management level. The management committee really need to be staying on top of what's included in your plan, month to month, quarter to quarter, what's your targets in terms of delivery, and a lot of the stuff which is in your plan beyond your bread and butter day-to-day, week-to-week stuff. Those should be things which should be cropping up regularly at your management committee meetings for discussion. Where are we in terms of that specific project? We've said we wanted to recruit additional volunteers by December. How are we getting on? It's currently October. Where are we at with that stuff? So keep your plan simple. Prioritize what it is you should be doing. If you set your action plan out properly with specific people and timescales, that's going to bring some accountability. And initially, I don't think we need to overcomplicate things. A 1-year plan might be the way forward for you. If you have a 3-year plan, I would certainly be breaking that down into bite-sized chunks. So hopefully I'm right in terms of my interpretation of that question, and maybe how it is, how to embed it or use it at a practical level. So hopefully that was helpful. In terms of us starting to get to some takeaways, these are some of the golden nuggets, if you like, the tips to success, and it is essentially just a recap of some of the material before. So number 1, involve the right people, ideally everyone, and by that we mean give everybody the opportunity to respond and have some sort of input. If they choose not to, that's up to them, but at least give them the chance. And the other thing we find with this is people are actually very supportive of the process. We're yet to have a club that's done consultation and had less than about 80 respondents to a survey, which is pretty decent data, and it's pretty reliable. So involve as many people as you can. Make sure you are spreading the workload in terms of your project team, and make sure that you're inviting all the relevant stakeholders in: parents, players, social members, relevant community people, whoever it may be. Give them the opportunity to respond to the process and have some input into the plan. In the long term, it will have significant value in terms of them buying into it, participating in activities or supporting the delivery of them. So that's really important. Be clear in your purpose, vision. Eliza's baby, and again, I agree with her in this stuff. Everything unfolds from that. If you get your vision right and you are clear on what it is you want to do, where you want to go, and why you exist, that will help you massively in the future. You're not going to delve off in the wrong direction. You're not going to start doing things which aren't of relevance to you as a club or of value. You will be focused on the right things. Keep it simple, break it down into bite-sized chunks. So again, hopefully us laying out the 6 areas which you can cover: admin, governance, facilities, playing, social, finance. Those are potential areas which you can look to break your plan down into. but also taking an objective, breaking it down into actions, identifying who should be involved, when they should be delivered, those kind of things. Doing those things will help you stay on top of it. It'll support the implementation of your plan, and it means that vague statements like grow members or raise additional funds, those kind of things, they're hollow. They don't have the detail that they need to make them happen and take them forward. So break it down, be specific. Encourage your members to get involved, give them ownership. One thing which we'll share briefly with you now, but this will come up in more detail in kind of webinars 2 and 3, is around the volunteering aspect. In all of our surveys we've put out, we've asked people, would you be interested in volunteering? Would you be interested in being part of a project? We are yet to get a club that gets tumbleweeds. As one example, we had a club that got 150 responses to a survey. 44 people said they'd be interested in volunteering in a project. So that is a really easy win for someone in the club to go up or to go and pick up the phone, speak to that person, drop them an email and say, you said you'd be interested in volunteering. You also told us you'd be interested in a specific area. Can we get you involved? So that's a really quick win. Involve people, give them ownership, ensure your plan has content which aligns to what their thoughts and feelings are via your consultation, and they will buy into it and they will be supportive. Be realistic, goes without saying. Don't go for pie in the sky stuff, specifically, or more specifically in the next 12 months, where we really need to be prioritizing and being realistic with what we're doing. If you are in qualifying 2 and you want to be playing All Ireland League 1A in the next 7 years or 8 years or how many years there are in between, be realistic with that. The chances of that happening are slim. Yes, it may happen if you have some quality seasons and quality recruitment, but be realistic with your targets. Definitely don't be looking at things which aren't viable, aren't feasible. Apply some common sense. And then finally, use it, share it, review your progress. There's no point in going through this process for it to become a document which gathers dust on the shelf. It should be central to what you do as a club. It should be part of your committee meetings. We're not saying that the whole plan needs to be discussed at every committee meeting you have, but there should be elements, there should be chunks of that which should be lifted out on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, as and when relevant. We would recommend that you undertake a pretty detailed review of your plan every 12 months. Rub things out, draw things in, make additions, make changes, make removals, whatever you need to do, but make sure that it is embedded in your club at a practical level. So those would kind of be our 6 key tips to success, if you like, and some of your main takeaways in terms of implementing this process. Next, we have asked for help. So we are here to support you in this journey, both in terms of provision of resources, templates, but also in terms of us being by your side, as Eliza said, to guide you through this process. As an example, we can come out with you and meet with you on a monthly basis or whatever it may be, working at the pace which you guys want to have these discussions to facilitate the process. We can support you in terms of setting up your survey. We can support you in terms of actually facilitating a workshop if you wanted to run an open night for your members and stakeholders. These are all things that we can support you with. You're not on your own. We're not leaving you to sink or swim here. We are here to support you through the journey. So that's definitely something we would recommend, is if you think this is something for your club, and if you think it's something which we can add value on, then certainly don't be afraid to pick up the phone. At the minute, we're being in contact with you maybe via digital means where we wouldn't once have before, but we're still here to support you on the journey. So please don't shy away from asking us for some support on this stuff.
Matt, just on that, I think it's important for us to also reflect on some of the clubs that we have previously worked with and are working with at the moment also. For a club that potentially are in the middle of their 5-year development plan, for this season moving forward, would you advise them to potentially implement and design a 1-year action plan or development plan for just this season moving forward within that 5-year development plan that they're currently in?
Yes and no. Yes, being obviously we're into a season which is going to be apples and oranges in comparison to last year. But what I would recommend is, if you have a longer term plan and you're already deep into that or halfway through it, I would certainly be going through that plan and making decisions around what are the things which we can continue to access during this mayhem that's going on. what are the things which need to be put on the back burner in the longer term. And then obviously there are going to be numerous additions which are spanners in the works, things which we never would have imagined, which have now cropped up as a result of the circumstance that we're in. So I would definitely recommend that clubs have a 1 year plan, but that may well sit within their 5 year plan. And if there is a plan which already exists, start to look through that and pull out the items which can continue to happen. They might not happen to the same degree or same level as you intended. You might need to rein in your ambitions a little bit, but certainly I don't think if you already have a plan, it becomes worthless. There will be aspects of that which you can continue to deliver with, and that's timely for us in relation to some of the previous work we were doing up until around March, supporting a number of clubs in the development plan process within their female game. A lot of clubs that we were involved with there had plans which we were ready to roll out, and then the circumstances changed. So our recommendation to them has been to, what can you continue to action? Where do you need to make some adaptations and alterations, and what can you continue to take forward? So if you have a plan, it's not worthless, but certainly you're going to need some adjustment to that. If you don't have a plan, initially our recommendation is probably to look at the year one, and once you get to the year one, then address year two and work from there. Does that answer your question? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's some great advice, and I think it's key that, you know, for our clubs out there, and for anyone that's interested after the webinar this evening, that, you know, that they just need to reach out, and maybe it is the case of just looking at the 1 year plan, and post that we can continue to work with them on potentially year 2 and 3 after this season, this different season that we're moving into. So no, that's great. Thanks so much, Matt.
So just do a check if there's any additional questions. I think anything that's come through we have addressed. What I would say as well is, if you have something which is kind of club specific for you, again, don't be afraid to share or to contact us. We're going to share our contact information again. Don't be afraid to contact us on anything around this stuff, whether it's around where your club should be going moving forward, whether it's around a specific question within the process which you think you might need to follow, whatever it may be. Please don't be afraid, and we're hopeful that some of you as well will be engaged with us off the back of this. But I think we've covered any questions that people have had. So in terms of what's coming up next, that's a very brief insight in terms of the club development process. I know we've rattled through some of that material pretty quickly. If it appears to be complex, it's not, but hopefully you have some insight. Webinars 2 and 3 will be coming up. Details of those will be released shortly, and they'll touch on elements that we've covered this evening in more detail. In terms of webinar 2 around growing and developing your volunteer workforce, everything in your development plan, or a very, very massive proportion of what's in your development plan, is going to be volunteer led. So what we would say to you is, if you don't have the volunteer resources, the human resources in place to deliver the stuff that you've mapped out, it's not going to happen. So if volunteering is something your club struggles with, and it's a massive issue for a large number of clubs, there will certainly be value for you in webinar 2 in terms of getting some support and context around how you can improve the circumstances there. So that's something we would encourage you to get on. If you need additional volunteers, and I think everybody would probably take them, there will definitely be some value in webinar 2 for you. Webinar 3 will really delve into a bit more detail around some of those consultation pieces we talked about in terms of engaging your members. So rather than us bombard you with the information that's involved there, you will gain some real value from webinar 3 as well, in terms of how to structure your survey, types of questions you should ask, audiences you should be approaching, that kind of stuff. So we'll keep you posted in terms of details of those. They will be coming up in the coming weeks, but there will be certainly real value in them in relation to some of the stuff we've talked about tonight. A lot of these pieces start to fit together. So those are things which are coming up next. I think that's pretty much us. We've kept that to 50 minutes, which wasn't too bad. Hopefully you got some value out of that. As I said, our contact information is up on the screen. Pick up the phone to us, drop us an email. We'll endeavour to get back to you regardless of what it is. And hopefully it's something we can be supporting you on in the future, immediate or longer term, whatever it may be. Make sure it suits your club. But any closing thoughts from you, Eliza? I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, no, look, I think there's some great advice there for everyone, and it's broken down hopefully some of those concerns or barriers or that fear around starting this process with us. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to engage with our clubs and our volunteers virtually through this. And you know, I've seen some of the content of some of the webinars coming up, and there's some cracking stuff, practical things that you can implement within your own club, and some great experiences from the deliverers there. So yeah, from both of us, thank you so much for giving us your time. As Matt said, this is recorded, so you're going to be able to access it afterwards if you need to share it with other members of your club. And we'll have different resources that will also be available along with the recording. So from both of us, we want to say a massive thank you, and stay safe, and thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks, guys.